Well, I hate to break it to you, boys and girls, but love is dead. Late last week, Donald Trump and former first bestie Elon Musk had a very public falling out following Musk's departure from the government the week before. To quote one of Donald Trump's least loved people in the public eye, the two of them are never, ever getting back together. Here's why. Elon Musk on Thursday sent all that stuff out on Twitter about how Donald Trump should be impeached and is in the Jeffrey Epstein files. Well, he's slowly walking that back, deleting those tweets and trying to call Trump on Friday. But the president wasn't having any of it. Instead, he spoke to a number of news outlets, which, to be honest, he hasn't really done this time around, and he tried to downplay the important role that Musk had in landing him back in the White House. Ultimately, Donald Trump is an alpha. He needs to feel like the most important, strongest guy in the room, and it's hard to do with the richest man in the room on the other side of that conference table. Furthermore, Elon was getting in fights behind the scenes, and we do know now that Trump thinks this is over because he's warned him against getting into political races on the behalf of Democrats.
I mean, the issue is that Elon had everything to lose and Trump didn't. And Elon made a couple of fatal errors. One, the advisor never wants to outshine the monarch, right? Because what we're dealing with like high Shakespearean tragedy of, let's even say A Man for All Seasons. We're dealing with Thomas More, Thomas Cromwell versus Henry VIII. You can't ever be bigger than Henry VIII. You can't speculate about the king's death, the monarch's death. I mean, there's a reason why it used to be considered treason. And again, this is a palace intrigue, not a democratic tragicomedy.
Correct.
And Elon saying Trump's only president for 3.5 more years and I'll be around for 40. Like, you don't say that. There are certain things you can think but you can't say, at least not publicly if you want to stay in Trump's good graces. And frankly, I think the real reason why Trump cares about all of this, like beyond the ego, because these are obviously two big egos, but Trump actually has been quite pragmatic this bout of the White House round. And I think he understood with Elon there was a trade to be made. Elon would have this unprecedented position in the federal government. He'd be given free rein at Treasury. Trump would buy a Tesla, try and juice up the stock price, authorize far more contracts for SpaceX and all of Elon's companies. And in exchange, Doge had to find real savings as pay-fors for the big, beautiful bill. And Doge did not, because as it turns out, the big issue with the federal government is not waste, fraud, and abuse, as Elon was thinking of it. It is, and remains, as we have discussed many times, the structural explosion of entitlement spending. And again, as we have said, if Donald Trump were President Thomas Massie or President Ron Johnson or anything like that, Elon could go after Social Security. He could go after Medicare. But you have President Trump who has spent 10 years in the public eye promising he's not going after those two entitlements. So Medicaid is all there is. And then it was supposed to be Doge. But what has Doge found that can be codified for 10-year savings of at least $1 trillion?
Zero, really. And look, I want to say I agree with you on the merits, but I actually kind of got to push back a little bit. I don't ever think this was like a performance review of the job that Elon was doing at Doge. I mean, we've seen Donald Trump forgive any number of egregious errors, even in this administration. Shout out Mike Waltz, shout out Pete Hegseth. You guys are probably on the chopping block next, but that's not, here nor there. Elon was making mistakes, and he was publicly running into conflict with Donald Trump, Scott Bessent, perhaps even more importantly, the man behind the scenes, and sort of trying to salvage Donald Trump's tariff policies. And look, ultimately, Elon Musk outwore his welcome. Donald Trump saw an opportunity there, and he was willing to be subservient, even if it was just to let Elon suck up all the incoming fire from the media and from Democrats. But there's no juice left to squeeze out of him, right? He doesn't need anything from him anymore. He's not running for the presidency again in 2028, and he doesn't need $250 million to backfill that campaign, right? So ultimately, Donald Trump is fickle. He will show you loyalty if you show it to him, but the second you get out of line, off with their heads. I mean, again, shout out Henry VIII. This is like a through line with us today. This wasn't actually about Musk failing to deliver on the promises, which, for the record, he wasn't campaigning. He didn't need to say, we're going to find $1 trillion in waste in year one. So he set that bar way too high for himself. This was always about star power and Donald Trump being willing to share the stage if he's getting something out of it, but as soon as it's more problems and that performance is sending the reviews down the drain, you're done, son.
It's not an only thing. It's not that like, oh, if he had been super successful at Doge and everything else was a dumpster fire, he would be 100% safe. It's that being actually good at your job is a pretty good hedge against negative coverage. Like think about, so you mentioned Pete Hegseth, who is, the media has had knives out for Hegseth since before he was confirmed.
Mm-hmm.
Say what you will about Hegseth, but military recruitment has met its fiscal year recruiting goal faster than it has in over a decade.
Yeah.
And that goes to, and Pete Hegseth, like, I don't know if he's great at being a Pentagon chief, but he sure does a good job doing it on TV. And that actually, this is one department where it does matter because you need human bodies to sign up. It's not the whole job, but it's a very important part. Elon didn't really have that. I don't know what, and like, look, I am sympathetic to anyone that's going through the 15-year life cycle of being a Tea Party Republican that begins with ardent enthusiasm and belief we can cut trillions in spending and ends with hating everyone, yourself, the government, but first and foremost, the Republican Party for constantly disappointing you. But the, college libertarian Tea Party Republican who is wildly disappointed with the GOP is usually not given free rein at the Treasury.
Yeah, that's true. There's actually one important point I meant to make. Elon Musk's drug use. This is the elephant in the room. Yes, we knew about it ahead of the Trump administration coming in January, but the New York Times wrote a piece the day he left office, and I have it on good authority that, I'm not going to name names, but senior members of the president's staff were literally printing out these reports. Donald Trump, of course, being a famous teetotaler based on his older brother's unfortunate path with addiction. I have to imagine he's willing to overlook a ton of sins, but if you are partying it up in EEOB or even in the White House when you're supposed to, again, be identifying hundreds of billions, if not trillions, in savings for the government, you're done.